Okay, today we got Bill Holter. Bill, I followed back up with you because I was in the bullion dealership and someone had watched our interview. And so I was like, matter of fact, I should send Bill an email today. So it's great to have you back on.
Thanks for having me, Jake.
So let's start here, Bill. Pretty interesting times going on right now, and a lot of stuff happening. It seems like we're kind of in a little bit of a melt-up phase. Seems like I saw the unemployment numbers came out today on Thursday. It seems like they're kind of slowly making their way back up. You want to give me your overall assessment on your opinion on what's happening right now? We also got the metals starting to get a little gasoline on their fire. So let's kind of start there. What do you think's going on right now? What's your assessment of everything?
This morning was the Q2 GDP was down 32.9%.
Oh, wow.
Which is the biggest drop in all of history. Basically, this is a train wreck on top of a debt bubble, and a debt bubble is popped. It's game over. I mean, the debt edifice is going to come down, and we've had the moratorium on rent, moratorium on paying mortgages, but it's all dead. I mean, you can pass a law saying that there's a moratorium, but the bottom line is one man's debt is another man's asset, and the assets are not being paid on, and in many instances, valueless.
So do you think that, what do you think they're going to do? Do you think they're going to try to just do another forbearance period and keep trying to push it off so it basically they stop anyone from having to, ordinary people from taking losses, and they're just going to see if they can ride it out longer? Or what do you think they're going to do here? It's such a weird situation to be in.
Yeah, it's not really riding it out. It's kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, right.
So to answer that question, yeah, I'm sure that they're going to try to kick the can down the road. But the bottom line is there's only one tool left, and that's to hyperinflate. That's to destroy the value of the dollar, to continue trying to prop asset prices up.
Do you think that's obvious? That's what they're going to do here from here on out, is try to just hyperinflate things back up and tell everyone it's fine?
Well, yeah, it's obvious. I mean, they've already started. How many trillions have they pumped into the system?
Yeah, right.
Both the Fed and from a fiscal standpoint. You know, you're talking what, 5-6 trillion, and now they're talking about trillions more.
Right. So, we started to see a move here in gold. I had Gerald Celente on yesterday, and he was saying back at like 1100. He said he couldn't imagine back at 1100 gold. He said basically he couldn't imagine gold not baselining at 2000. And now we're basically at that, and I'm starting to look at it and say, well, shoot, maybe Bill's going to be right here in after a few more cycles of these stimulus over the next couple of years. We might have $10,000 gold. What's your thoughts on gold and silver? It seemed like we got a little pullback here, and then everything's kind of sold off the last couple days a little bit. What's your assessment right now? And you and the rest of your team over at Mindset and Sinclair and the rest of you guys, what are you guys seeing, and what are you guys kind of forecasting?
I don't think you can't trade these markets. You can't even try to time gold or silver. Gold, even with the pullback, is still at an all-time high above the 2011 highs. Silver broke over the 18-19 level, traded up as high as 26. It's in the 23-24 range now. It's almost impossible to put a number on gold because you don't have all the variables to put into place for a formula. One variable is how much gold does the U.S. have. We've said since 1956, or we've not had an audit since 1956. The U.S. says that we have 262 million ounces, but that's not audited. And my assumption is we don't have all that gold. That's the first variable. The second variable is how much money supply is going to be created, how much more debt is going to be created. If you do the math, I did the math, I think it was 2 years ago when the total debt was 21 trillion. If you divide that with the 262 million ounces, you come up with a number of $87,000 an ounce if it was required for the debt to be paid in gold. The gold would have to be $87,000 an ounce. And that was 2 or 3 years ago. The number is now over 100,000, and we have no idea how much more money supply is going to be created and how much more debt is going to be created. So you used a number a couple minutes ago of $10,000, and that's laughably low when all is said and done.
It seems, I mean, if what they're going to do is they're just going to print to high heaven over the next couple years and start giving everyone money every month, I mean, it seems, you're right, it does seem like, it seems like you just pick a number in the sky, and that's probably where it will go if they keep on this pace.
Well, you're looking at the eventual extinction of the dollar, because the only tool that the Fed has left is to print. There's no other tool. The only thing they can do is continually shove more and more dollars into the system. And what that does is it dilutes the value of the dollar.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting to see everything you've been talking about for a long time really starting to play out in real time. And then everyone kind of got lulled back to sleep the last, I don't know, what do you think, 8 weeks or so, maybe even a little bit less, because they kind of had we're kind of having a melt up in the stock market. So everyone kind of thought everything was fine. And then we had a couple of weeks where the unemployment numbers were going down consecutively. And I think this is the second week in a row where it's back up consecutively. And so it's quite interesting to see what you've been talking about really starting to play out. One of the other things that you've said for a long time, I think this was right when Trump got elected, you said keep an eye on Judy Shelton, and then she just...
We said it the next day, the day after the election.
So tell me what you think about her coming in. That was nuts that she won the spot 13-12. How was that? Seemed very
well.
divine.
That was strictly along party lines, and now there's a couple of senators that say they're not going to vote for her. One is Mitt Romney. It's hard to say whether she's going to pass or not, and she is a hard money gold advocate. So if she does get on the board, it's going to be interesting. I would love to see what the minutes are going to look like.
So what do you think is going to play out now as we're looking ahead? Do you think that basically what we can expect is maybe a little bit more pumps in the market and just more and more and more money printing, and then we just ride it out for the next couple years until eventually the mass public starts to lose confidence in fiat currency? Or what do you really think is, if you kind of look from today out over the next 2 or so years, how do you see this kind of moving?
I think you're being extremely optimistic by thinking this thing can hold together for 2 or 3 more years. I don't see that at all. I wrote an article, I'm guessing it was 4 weeks back, talking about the fact that the mortgage payments, rent payments, et cetera, across the board were 90 days late. Well, now we're 120 days late. And basically, you're looking at a debt implosion. The stock market came back, and of course the stock market came back because they pumped trillions into the financial system. So the money had to go somewhere. The only problem is now you have we're not even back to the old highs where we are on the NASDAQ. But my point being is you've got stocks now valued way, way, way higher than what they were back in February. Even though the stocks are basically the same price as they were in February, the earnings underneath the stocks won. I mean, you had a 32% drop in GDP. Think about airlines. Think about restaurants. Think about, pick any number of industries. The earnings aren't there. So you're, instead of trading at stupid numbers, which we were in February, at, call it 30 times earnings, now we're, what are we, 50 times earnings, 70 times earnings, 100 times earnings. The stocks are more overvalued than any time ever in history.
Yeah, that's what's so nuts to me, is looking at it, and it's how few people either can connect the dots, or they just see it go back up and they don't want to think about it. They don't want to think
Right.
about the fact that the Fed is buying everyone's debt. Like, it's just like, it's so weird. I feel like I'm living in a movie or something.
You pretty much are.
So let me ask you then, when you are...
Hey, Jake, let me just add.
Please.
Everything runs on debt, and debt has been impaired all over the world. It's going to be a debt implosion that takes everything with it, including currencies. I had an interesting conversation Tuesday night. We lived in Costa Rica for 5 years, and we had a driver, a chauffeur, who since then, and this was 10 years ago almost now, since then he went to school, became an attorney. And we talked to him Tuesday night, and what he told us was, with the COVID shutdown, people are selling cars, any type of assets they can, at less than half of what they were valued back in February, early March, to buy food. And that's gonna happen all over the world.
He was saying that's happening in Costa Rica right now?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think.
I mean, assets are changing hands for less than half of what they were back in February.
And you got to think. I mean, we see a lot of red flags here in America, but man, I can't imagine the red flags in a country that relied on United States tourism, or just in general tourism.
Exactly, and I mean, think about the debt that was used to build hotels, to build the tourist industry. How much of that has been serviced over the last 4 months? Pretty much close to zero.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it's pretty nuts. The other thing that kind of concerns me about it also is that the type of character that we're building, in that, you see these kind of corrupt hedge funds and whomever, the NBA team getting money, and then it makes your average person go, well, I want free money too. Give me more. And it concerns me because of the character that's being built, because we really are creating a society where nobody wants to produce and everybody just wants the government to take care of them. And, even if they're able to kick this can further down the road, the concern is that the bubble, like you've talked about for so long, the debt bubble, will be so much worse, because it seems like nobody really wants to do anything anymore, basically. Like, so many people that I know, I'm 29, just turned 29 last week. So, a lot of folks in my 20s and friends of friends and, people I went to high school with that I'll see around. And I can't tell you how many people told me that they were making more money from unemployment than they were from their job. And that's setting up for a really interesting situation that I think you've said it, but I think this is only the beginning of the riots. I mean, what's going to happen, especially if Trump wins?
No matter who wins the election, there's going to be rioting.
Because they've justified.
There's going to be rioting over food.
Has justified for the right, right? So now the right is like, well, if you guys are going to do it, we're going to do it.
I think any violence you see from the right will be not in support of, but asking for or demanding a rule of law. You mentioned that we're building a society of takers and not producers. And the only thing I would say to that is that society was already built. We've built it over many, many years, since before you were born. I mean, you could go back to the 60s and you can see social programs where, for instance, welfare, the more children you have, the more you get paid. I mean, there's just program after program after program that has lured people, if you will, to rely on the nanny state. And the problem is that the government doesn't have any money. The money that the government spends is taxpayer money. It's our money. It's the taxpayers. And then when that's not enough, what does the government do? They go out and they borrow more, and have created a debt now that cannot be paid back. So this is a train wreck in progress. And if you watch CNBC and they talk about a V-shaped recovery, all of that's bullshit. That's not even possible.
So elections. What is your personal opinion on the elections and what we could see coming out of all this? Do you think that this has set up a door to bring in a Democrat? Do you think that this is the way that this has panned out has lowered your, I mean, if I would have asked you or anybody really in December, I think almost anybody, whether you were Democrat or Republican, it seemed pretty obvious that with how, quote unquote, well the economy was doing and such, that Trump was kind of a shoo-in. What do you think now?
I'm going to say the same thing that I said to an audience in Munich 3 or 4 days before the 2016 election, that if it's a fair election and it's not rigged, I think Trump will win. I believe these riots. I think the average Democrat is not a crazy loon left wacko, and they do not approve of cities being totally destroyed and torn up. I mean, they've literally destroyed the heart of the cities across the country. And I think the average person, whether Democrat or Republican, looks at what has happened and what is happening as a complete travesty. So my opinion is, I think there's a lot of Democrats that will not, they see what's being done. They see what has happened. They see people like Nadler yesterday or the day before saying that, oh, well, those are peaceful demonstrations. Rioting, that's a myth. I think they see through the lies. I think they see CNN, MSNBC, NBC, ABC. They see the media. They see what Twitter's doing. They see what Facebook's doing. They see YouTube taking entire channels down. They see the censorship. They see the lies. And I believe and obviously hope that the average American stands up and says, enough of this. We need the rule of law. Without the rule of law, we don't have a country.
Right. And it's it's something in theory, but then now when you see it playing out in real time, you can see how that is very true. And obviously you're right. We legitimately don't have a country unless we have that. So Bitcoin's becoming more buzz lately. I saw Robert Kiyosaki, who, is probably one of the
Hey, Jake,
most, yeah.
I prefer not to even talk about Bitcoin. I'll tell you what I think about Bitcoin. I think it's digital air. I think the cryptos are digital air. They don't have value. Now, that said, I do believe that you're going to see central banks all over the world once the collapse happens and we get new currencies. I think many of the currencies will be digital cryptocurrencies, however, issued by central banks.
So do you think that they're going to use that
I wouldn't buy Bitcoin with your money.
So do you think they're going to use that word and say, hey, look, we're having trouble with all these currencies now, whenever this time may be, whether it's in 6 months or 4 years, and they're going to say, so look, we have a cryptocurrency now, it's the dollar crypto. Do you think that's how they're going to usher in digital currency, is kind of say, look, we have our own crypto now?
Think about the saying, don't let a good crisis go to waste. And the reaction to the crisis that's started and not even close to finished yet, the response is going to be cryptocurrencies issued by central banks.
How do we get out of all this mess then? I mean, it's you're very logical and rational, but it's always like, holy cow, whether I talk to you or I listen to you, because you're very honest and you're very rational about what's happening. And it makes me, as someone who's, as I told you, got a kid on the way any day now, I go I got a lot of gold, I got a lot of stuff, I've got 90% of my net worth in gold, silver, and mining stocks for a little leverage play on that portion. And I go, I'm probably going to move into the top 0.5% of my generation during all this, but I'm concerned about the world my kid's going to inherit. How do we get out of this mess? What are the things that would need to happen for us to create a better world and for us to advance as a human race? What are some of those things if Bill was in charge?
Well, probably the most important thing that needs to happen is there needs to be actual bankruptcies. There needs to be actual clearing of the decks. And that's what recessions always did in the past, is cleared out malinvestment. And you can go back, starting at the first Gulf War, the 1990-91 recession. Every recession has been aborted. Not one recession was allowed to go and clean out and allow bankruptcies to occur. There's been nothing but bailouts. So we need to let this thing run full course, and it needs to clear out and clean out all of the malinvestment. And basically, you're talking about a wipeout of the credit system. And a new credit system is going to need to arise, and that credit will need to be issued off of real money. It will need to be issued off of gold balances. And of course, the price of gold is going to have to be high enough to be able to create enough credit to get the system running again. But the debt that's outstanding now needs to be cleared out. They're not going to do that. What they're going to try to do is they're going to try to hyperinflate it and make the debt payable. They're trying to reflate again. It's not doable because the debt that's outstanding already is not payable. And they're trying to fix a debt problem with more debt. That's like trying to treat a heroin addict with another huge shot of heroin. What does it do? It kills the patient.
Here's another funny analogy. It's like trying to fix the flood in your kitchen by turning the faucet on.
Yeah, exactly.
So here, you and I talked about this last time, and you've talked a lot about it, and in the many types of articles and interviews and lectures that you've done, is about the necessity or real possibility of a future gold-backed currency. And there's a lot of people that say, man, that would be nice, but it'll never happen because the banks don't want it. And I'm sure you've heard people argue that with you. Could you address that part? Because people say, man, that would be nice, and the banks sure have enough gold to do it if they revalued it, but they're never going to let it happen. And instead, they'll come up with a new fiat and convince everyone that it's good, and they'll never let it happen. I know because you're so logical and rational, you understand the importance of having it, but in real honesty, do you think that it will ever actually happen?
Yeah, I absolutely do, but not on the first try. We think that there's going to be two resets. The first one will be man-made, and that will fail. It may fail very quickly. It may last 6 months to a year, maybe even a year and a half. But any man-made fix is going to fail. And gold is going to seek or find its real level versus currencies. And it's important to understand that central banks, the only way central banks are taking on more and more bad debt. I mean, look at the ECB, look at Bank of Japan, look at the Fed. They've all taken bad debt onto their balance sheet. So they're going to be the ones left holding the bag with the losses. What's the only way that they can fill up the black hole of defaults? The only thing that they have on their balance sheet is to mark the value of gold higher. So they're going to finally allow Mother Nature to mark the price of gold to where it needs to be to satisfy the solvency, if you will, of the central banks. And anybody who says that a gold-backed currency would be nice, well, let me back up for a second. When we're saying gold-backed currency, we're not talking about a convertible gold currency. And the reason being, anytime a currency is convertible into gold, it always converts and all the gold goes away. But as far as a gold-backed currency is concerned, you're definitely going to see China do that. China's been accumulating gold for the last 20 years. And I'm on the back of a napkin, I can show you where they already have at least 25,000 tons of gold. And they're going to mark the price of gold higher, and it will back the yuan. Now, whether the yuan becomes, and we believe it will be a digital currency, whether that becomes the new reserve currency, I don't know. But the most important reserve asset on all of the central banks' balance sheets is gold, because that's the only thing that can make them solvent again with a higher price.
So for a dummy like me, the only other thing I could think is, could they theoretically, instead of trying to make themselves solvent again by revaluing the price of gold, and this is what I see some people argue online, they say instead what they're going to do is do basically a debt jubilee, cancel the system, and create a new currency without revaluing gold to keep gold out of the monetary system so they could do the same con game again. Can that happen?
Well, that's the man-made reset that I just mentioned. Yes, I absolutely think that they're going to try to do that. Now, one big problem with that is, remember, if you do a debt jubilee, what did you do? You just blew up all kinds of pension plans. Anybody who owns bonds is going to be wiped out because the bond becomes valueless. So you tell one person, well, your debt's gone, but you're telling the other person, oh, your asset's gone.
Huh. Right. And then what do you do? Right. That makes sense. It's like, well, what do you do now?
Think about malls across the United States. Think about them. They were built with debt. And now the tenants aren't paying. which means the debt's not being paid to the banks for the debt that was used to build these malls.
Right.
Think about the airline industry. I mean, just you go through industry after industry, and you can see that the model is now broken. It's over.
So then that's where you say, well, the only solution, even though they don't want a gold-backed currency, a non-convertible, you're saying
that's the only thing. Yeah, that is a gold as the foundation to the system. When all is said and done, after the first reset fails, the reason it's going to fail is because confidence is going to break. People are going to realize, oh, they're doing the same thing all over again. And people will not accept a currency that's not got some type of real backing. And history shows us that the best money is gold.
So when do you see this second reset? Is this 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road?
No. Like I said, I think the first reset could last as short as 2 weeks or a month. It might be 6 months. It could be a year and a half, but I don't see it going more than a year and a half or 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Because the first reset is not going to fix anything.
Right. So do you think it's just going to kind of be a marketing pitch, kind of like when gold was at all-time highs, and then the Fed said they were going to unravel their balance sheet, and everyone kind of chilled out, and life went back to normal? They're going to try to make a like a nice marketing pitch like that tells everyone everything's fine. They'll kind of try to do that again. And you think that's
on a very grand scale.
Yeah.
But you've already seen that what happened in 2018 when the Fed tried to start shrinking their balance sheet.
Everything started.
Interest rates went up.
Right.
Liquidity went away. And it's important to understand that this thing was already blowing up before the coronavirus. This goes back to September 16th of last year when the repo market blew up. Rates went from 1% to 10% overnight. And that was the beginning of the credit default, if you will.
And you and I talked about this on our last one, is when I was doing a lot of due diligence, I found an interview from July of 2019 in which you stated that you were feeling like the credit market was about to implode and there would probably be a false flag to prop it back up. And then we had the implosion in September, and then insert shutting down the economy to kind of calm the markets.
Right. I mean, look at you're saying a false flag. Yeah, COVID's real, but do you shut a 330 million population down for 145,000 people who died, or 150, or whatever the number is? And then on top of that, it's as if just look at where and who is the biggest advocates of shutting everything down. It's the left. They want everything shut down. They want the worst possible economy they can have going into the election. And you've got YouTube, you've got Twitter, you've got Facebook. Anything to do with hydroxychloroquine it's censored, it's shut down. You can't even talk about it. But yet you have doctor after doctor after doctor saying it works. It's cheap. The drug companies aren't going to make a ton of money with the fix. So, in my opinion, there's your false flag.
Right. So, what are the things that you're really keeping your eye on? Is there anything particular as we're kind of coming closer to an end here? Is there anything particular you're keeping an eye on from now until the end of the year that other people listening can can follow your steps on, or you just kind of keeping an eye on everything as a whole?
Obviously, you keep an eye on gold and silver. The gold price is now at an all-time high versus every currency on the planet. Now, what I just said in reverse, and the reality is, every single currency on the planet has devalued to all-time lows versus gold. So, I mean, that's one thing right there. That's showing you that the fiat system is coming down. You can watch interest rates, you can watch foreclosures, but we know that foreclosures, we know that debt arrearages are going to go through the roof. I mean, it is a global bankruptcy. So, I think it's important to watch gold. I think it's important to watch the foreclosure rates, the losses to banks. I think watching the stock market is a joke.
Right. There's more integral things that can't be manipulated as much that are going to give you a more clear sense of what's happening.
Well, Jake, there's a very real case to be made that the stock markets have come back because of the liquidity that's been put into the system. But there's a real case to be made that this is the beginning or the beginnings of hyperinflation. And I think that's the case. So you could see stock markets never go down and even test the lows of March or April. Those may have been the lows, and you see stock markets go higher. However, currencies will drop much, much faster than stock markets go up. And I mean, that's just look at history. That's the case look at any hyperinflation. Look at Weimar Germany. Look at Zimbabwe. Look at Venezuela, a real-time case. In the Venezuelan bolivars, I think in 2018 and 19, the Venezuelan stock market was the best stock market on the planet. But of course, purchasing power has been completely destroyed because the currency goes down way faster than the stocks go up.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. If it'll be interesting to see if there's a hop, skip, and a jump in inflation that comes here soon, because looking at the charts of the rate of inflation in like Weimar Germany and things like that, it is pretty crazy to see how it can kind of be steady, and then all of a sudden 30 days later there's a 20% jump. And that's what's going to be kind of interesting if we get any of those, I guess, quantum type of non-linear movements in inflation.
And that'll only be the beginning.
Because then when that happens, everyone kind of starts to realize it. But then when everyone realizes it, then that makes it move even faster, or what?
Well, yeah, what that is, break or a loss of confidence in the currency. And for your listeners, it's important to understand, if you own silver or gold and you see it at $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 an ounce, if you sell your gold, where are you going to keep that capital that's going to be safe and protect your purchasing power? This is the rally in the metals that you never sell until there's a new currency that can be trusted.
Okay, that's a good way to kind of end, because I've thought about that in my head. I mean, I've put so much of my net worth into gold and silver. Sometimes I sit there and I go, well, if it goes to 5,000, what do I do? And you're saying, if it was you hold
what
until,
can you do?
Yeah.
What can you do? I mean, if you sell your metal, you're going to end up with some type of currency. What currency is that going to be? Is it going to be dollars? Is it going to be euros? Is it going to be Swiss francs? I mean, who knows? But the point being, all of these currencies are in the process of being destroyed. So if you give up your position in gold or silver to take, quote, your profit, you're still going to end up with basically all your purchasing power. And your audience, your crypto people are going to say, "Oh, well, you just put it in Bitcoin and everything's fine." And I disagree with that. We believe it's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on it. The reason I wanted to bring that up is I saw Kiyosaki said he sold out of his gold and moved it all into Bitcoin, and I thought that was
well, good luck with that.
Thing.
You better hope there's no power outage.
I just thought that was such a bizarre thing. That was and that was yesterday. As someone, he started buying it at like $20, I think he said, or $30 or something. So,
well, my only comment is, good luck. I think it was a big mistake, but we'll leave it at that.
So, in conclusion here, tell me some things outside of your studies you've been enjoying. You still been riding your horse every day?
Every day.
What's its name? It's got a Spanish name, right? Or you talk to it in Spanish, right?
Yes. Príncipe. Prince in Spanish.
Has it learned any English yet, or still pure Spanish?
I speak almost exclusively in Spanish. That's awesome. If you speak to him in English, I'm sure he's hearing blah, blah, blah.
That's awesome. Cool, Bill. Well, I think that's a good way to end. I think that your last point about really being sure about quote unquote taking your profits is a good way to end, because it's been something I've been thinking a lot about, is what do you do? So I think that's a great way to end. We'll have to reconnect when we get a little closer to the election. I imagine around September, October, we should see a lot of drama starting to unfold all around. So it'll be interesting to get an update from you then.
Every day's more drama.